Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. I got Darren and Dave and Patrick back with me again today. On the last episode we did with them, we talked a little bit about just some advice and getting started and some things you maybe do a little differently as you're, flipping and renovating houses. And on this episode, I want to kind of focus a little bit more on building a business and making a business out of that. So, kind of heard from the last episode of Dave has been doing this for a while, and he's working with students and kind of building his business that way, helping other people. Darren's building that lifestyle business of how does he want this to work for him and what does he want to do with it. Patrick's building a business off of flipping and then doing it for other people and doing their renovations and doing some projects for them and stuff like that. So they've all have different expertise when it comes to what part of flipping are they doing, what part of renovations are they doing, but how do these businesses work for them and how can they actually make that work when it comes to the Indy investor community here in Indianapolis, Indiana. So Dave, I want to start with you on this. Just like when it comes to building a business and making flipping properties and renovating properties for yourself and other people work, when you look at like building that business, what would you recommend is maybe that first hire that you would need to bring on? Not necessarily how you did it, but even if you had to go back and kind of do it again, what would be that first hire, that first person you really need to bring on to make this work for you as a business?
Well, there's a couple of things I don't know that I would have done different. I certainly would have looked at doing different you know, I made it a business as a family business. My wife and I, my three of my sons are in the real estate business. So, I'd hoped to build something through them, but they're not interested in my side of the business. So we've taken the stretch now as I'm developing an office center in Irvington where Cyria's headquarters is at. And I'm taking that and trying to build that for long-term wealth and retirement income. And then I'm taking my real estate business, my flipping business, and starting to go out and maybe joint venture more with students. I'm doing a couple now with Courtney and Stacy, and I hope to do a couple more with Darren and some other students that have been successful in it to take away my time so I can free my time up. So now I'm looking to exit time in the flipping side and still kind of do the numbers that we have as I build my Cyria space.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a big thing of, going through and working with, business owners and entrepreneurs. I think that's the number one thing I always kind of look at is like, hey, when you are building your business and you're looking to maybe bring on that first one or two people, or even after you've been into it, and you need to bring on team members. It's really like, hey, where can you bring them on to free up your time? That's what you need to be looking at and that might be different for everybody, based off of what you like doing, things that you're good at, and things that you like doing, but then also what takes up the most time when you're digging into the stuff and things. So Darren, for you, if you're, when you're doing this and you started this 5 years ago, learning from Dave and you've got into it, yourself and things, what was that kind of first hire that you kind of brought on for yourself, or that first person that you would maybe need to hire as you're growing your business and turn this into something you can kind of expand on and get to that lifestyle that you want?
Yeah. So for me, because I do my own marketing and stuff like that, like Dave, like you said, everybody runs a different kind of business. So Dave gets most of his leads just from networking because of who he is. People bring him stuff. But most of us are going out and actually looking for leads on our own because nobody does that.
We're not as popular as Dave, where we just have people hand us over deals and stuff.
But, like in order to do that effectively, like to market, to answer the phone calls, to go on the appointments, to, manage the flip, like you've got to have processes in place. And so if you're trying to do all those things yourself, it is, I would say, almost impossible to document the processes and make it duplicable with other people, so that you could bring on an acquisitions person. So I would say if you're like grab an admin person or, some kind of, you could probably find them on Fiverr, something like that, somebody that can help you document those processes and put them in some kind of a package so that you could hire that acquisitions person. So you could hire the project manager or whatever, and just be able to hand them this package of training, and then you can just supervise them after that,
Yeah.
But you need to have somebody help you build those processes.
Yeah, so important, so very important stuff. And those are the things that do take up the most time. It's some of those little admin tasks and things. So you can get somebody to take care of that. It makes a big difference. Patrick, for you, of going from being able to flip properties on your own and doing that, and then growing into a business of, hey, you're going to start doing this for other people, and becoming that project manager and GC and everything like that. All of a sudden, once you start doing that, of like, oh, everybody needs a contractor, everybody needs somebody. So when you're in that phase of it, of what is it really about for you? Is it about having your own contractors, or is it about building relationships with other contractors, things like that? What do you think is that kind of most important step along that, going through that?
So because I have the investor background as well, if I'm looking at it from that perspective, it's having a good core team, right? So if you're an investor, you need a good realtor. If you're buying rentals, you need a good property manager. And in any scenario, you need good contractors. A lot of times, second to the purchase price of the house, the rehab is going to be the most financially impactful part of the project. So having those people in your back pocket that you can pull out when you need them is hugely valuable. And then that actually correlates really closely, because that's part of the reason I became a general contractor and got my license and everything, was because I had enough bad experiences with terrible contractors, and I needed someone good in my corner. And I'm like, I'm just going to build my own team.
Yeah.
But the same rule applies where, we're a general contractor. So we have an in-house crew or two where we can take stuff down ourselves. But, we use our fair share of specialty contractors as well. And the same rule applies. I still need to have those good subcontractors in my back pocket that I can pull out whenever we need them. So building that team is one of the most important, impactful pieces of investing. If I can answer your question about what my first hire would be, Darren stole my first answer, which would have been like, literally go out right after you listen to this podcast and go hire a VA.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy money, it's cheap, and it's such a hurdle for people, but just go do it. Like at the worst case scenario, you're going to be out a couple $100 and you'll figure out, what worked, what didn't work, and you'll be better off for it. And start assigning off those menial tasks, right? Checking the MLS for new properties and making some phone calls and emails, whatever. Start handing that stuff off right away. But since Darren stole that one,
you're welcome.
My other would be not necessarily a hire, but find some good software that fits for whatever it is you're trying to do, and don't be afraid to invest a little bit of money to make that work. So, like on the wholesaling side, there's stuff like REI Black Book and other Deal Machine, things like that aren't massively expensive, and they can save you tons of time. Even free stuff like using programs like Asana or Trello. On the general contracting side, we use Builder Trend, and that saves us tons of hours every week. So it's we pay $500 a month for that software, but it saves multiples of that every week.
Yeah.
So not even necessarily a new hire, but I guarantee anybody who is interested in actually building out their investing or their business, I assure you there are ways to automate things.
Yeah.
So search those out for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. A couple of things here right now is that I think when you mentioned a virtual assistant, and Darren kind of mentioned that too, finding an assistant on Fiverr and stuff like that, I always have people ask me of like, oh, what could somebody like over in the Philippines really do for my business? Of like, I have never given a virtual assistant a task that they couldn't do. Like, they have always been able, as long as their training is okay and I provide them with all the resources or the support that they need, they've been able to handle anything that I've ever been able to give them, which is awesome and stuff. So
okay,
another
Brian,
thing,
I changed my answer to Patrick's.
You're gonna change it up, so we'll go with that. So
I mean,
another one,
I need to get automated.
there you go. So another one that I put on there that a lot of people don't consider is, I think, also having somebody that can dig into your finances, whether it is the right accountant or a fractional CFO or somebody like that can help you out with strategy with what you're doing, how to make your money work for you, and kind of do that. I think that's a thing that a lot of people don't get into the business. They realize like, oh, I need somebody to help me with my taxes, or I need somebody to help me with this. You can start off with that right kind of financial person, can also help your business out a lot and help you kind of make those decisions along with you. I think.
Okay, I changed my answer again. I'm gonna go with that.
So there we go. Dave's just all around the board. Just hire everybody. Just figure it all out.
No, these are good answers.
So,
You know.
That's good. Darren, I want to go to, I think, one of the last times that we were together, we were walking through one of your projects and things like that. And you kind of mentioned how you were going from like when you started off of like, hey, I'm, I used to be out in the evening and doing the yard work on the property to make it look good. And now you're kind of in that phase of like, I want to do the least amount of work that I can on my projects. And it's really just about setting up and get my crews in there and just finding the deals. And then you hand it off to your people. So when you're going through that, and Patrick mentioned this too, of like finding, building those relationships and finding the right crews, what's some advice you have for that people of like finding the right crews, but then also just keeping them busy and then keeping them on task and keeping them on target with those goals and dates that you set out for them?
And that's a bunch of questions, but as far as like keeping them busy, so for me, because I do fewer projects a year than most people, what I do is I just refer, when people are like, hey, do you know a good contractor? I won't refer my good contractors to people that I know are going to give them a hard time about their pricing or whatever. But like, if I know that they're going to be a match, then, like I'll swipe right or whatever the right direction is. So, and I'll hook those people up. So I keep him busy that way. And I know he's probably, to be honest, he's probably charging them more than he charges me. So, when it's time for me to, use him again, I still get my preferred pricing because I'm helping him get a better rate later. I don't remember what the rest of your questions were. I already forgot.
No, you're good. So I think going from that phase, I think when people are getting into this business of flipping and renovating and stuff like that, they are doing a little bit more on their own. How do you go about like kind of giving that up and then trusting people to get things done? So trusting them to get things done, but then also with that of like staying on target with like, hey, we need this done by this date, or hey, this is staying within this price. Things are going to pop up with prices, but making sure they stay on track with their pricing as well a little bit, and being in the loop on those projects when you're not necessarily doing the work yourself and being there every day.
I think you got to have those conversations up front to begin with.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the things I teach in my 101 classes, like have those conversations up front so that they know what you expect. And then, inspect what you expect and make sure that the timelines are being met, the prices are being, adhered to as best as they can. But I mean, you have to be realistic, especially since COVID, like about prices and even timelines. I mean, if they're waiting for materials, then they're waiting for materials. I mean, like right now we're waiting for a garage door that I think we've been waiting for it for 7 weeks right now. And initially we were told it was 3 weeks by the supplier, but they can't get the steel to make the door. So there's some kind of it's a special steel because it's not like a regular 6-panel door. So now we're like another 3 weeks, and I think we're going to actually close the transaction with plywood over the garage door. So, it's just, you have to be realistic with them, but you have to supervise them at the same time. Like just because you use Patrick doesn't mean that you can just, turn the keys over to him, walk away and hope that you're going to come back in 6 weeks and the project is exactly what you wanted. Like if you're not in the project, weekly at least, to see it and asking him, what's going on with it, then something's probably going to not turn out the way you wanted it to turn out.
Yeah.
He can't read your mind.
Yeah. I think that's great advice of just like no matter how great somebody is that you still have to manage the manager. I mean, if you're still, if it's your project, if it's your property that you're flipping or you're doing whatever, you still have to manage who that person is. So Patrick, let's go to your side a little bit on that of when if you're doing a project for me, I am going to manage you, even though you're managing the project and stuff like that. So how do you go about dealing with those relationships and kind of making sure that things are, staying on track, not just for you and your teams, but also you're complying with what the kind of that person that's keeping you on track is, you're doing what they need.
Yeah. I have lots of opinions on this. I first want to point out before I forget, is that the first Tinder reference you've ever had on Indy Investor Pod?
I think it might be. Came from like one of the last people I'd ever thought maybe make that reference, but it's all good.
Love it. All right. So when it comes to timelines, I mean, if I'm being totally honest, I don't know that we've ever, we've done over 150 houses in the last 2-3 years. I don't know that anything has been completed on time or especially early. Yeah. Back to my previous comment, like there's always going to be extras. There's always going to be something else you find. So to come out of the gate, have realistic expectations, like is very important. Like no project is going to go off without a hitch at all. I do want to draw a distinction because, so a lot of times, an investor might have the expectation that certain things are getting done, and they may feel as though the project is slipping, right? Maybe it's taken a little longer than they thought, or we thought we would have X, Y, and Z done by this date. And the distinction I want to draw is it's one thing to make sure that some sort of progress is happening on a job, right? I can be working on a project and not making as much progress as we had all hoped. So there's that versus I'm not on your job at all.
Yeah.
So it is the lack of progress, things like material back ordered. Honestly, lately we've had a lot of issues with subcontractors because the good ones are slammed. The good subs with good pricing are very busy right now. So I'm going to wait in line for a week to use my preferred sub, so I can hit my budgets and all that. But along that similar vein, having that actual conversation. Yeah. So it may look like nothing's actually happening when in the background I'm scrambling to like try to get extra or more quotes or talk to different suppliers to see if we can get windows in sooner or whatever. So you're not seeing anything on the job, but there's stuff happening in the background.
Yeah.
But if you were the investor though, say you had like a super expensive house and your holding costs were going to be, higher, then sometimes if as long as the two of you are communicating, you might be able to say to Patrick, like, hey man, I don't want to wait for a week for this cheaper guy. Just pay for this other dude because I can't wait.
Yep.
Yeah.
It all comes into that communication. Yep.
So one of the ways we work with that is I send weekly updates with pictures and kind of what we're working on, what we expect to work on the next week or whatever. And that helps a lot, I think, on the investor side. Right. We started doing that because I wish I had that when I was hiring contractors. Yep. So we started doing that, and that's helped a ton. And in that email, that communication, we can put in there, just this week, it was like Lowe's or Home Depot messed up our countertop order, right? We had to custom order something and they totally lost it. We just lost 2 weeks on the job. They're obviously chomping at the bit to get this thing listed. It's literally the last thing to go in. We're waiting. And so I said, hey, for an extra $500, we can have the granite guy go out there. He can get it in by Friday and you can still list by the weekend. And they were like, absolutely, let's do it. So those options are there as well. But if I wouldn't have said, hey, this secondary option is a thing, for a couple $100, we can make this happen. Without that communication, we would have just been sitting still. So.
No, I think I really wanted to come back to that question too, because it does fall into what we talked about last of like realistically, whether you're doing the project on your own or whether you're relying on somebody else to do it for you, there's going to be things that come up, whether it's going to be, hey, this needs a little bit more time, or, hey, this material is not in stock right now, or, hey, we found this thing and it's going to be a little bit over budget right now, or whatever it may be. There's going to be things that pop up. I mean, that's what happens when you're tearing into any of these houses, especially when they can possibly be, 50 years old, 100 years old and things like that. That's what happens in Indianapolis. Dave, when you are building a business, especially through flipping and renovations, I know the biggest thing is just having supply, having the properties to be able to do this with. We alluded to you of being able, you have built relationships, but you've also done marketing. You've done multiple things over the years. What are some tips that you have for people when they are trying to find deals, source deals, whether it's on their own or through other people? What's some advice you have for that?
Well, I mean, I think Patrick alluded to it earlier, is networking and being face-to-face with people. And almost all of my networks is, I know all the wholesalers and, they want to do business with me. I know all the people in my real estate company and they want to do business with me because they've talked to other agents in our office. My dinner and deals group is, by giving back, you get so much more in return. The Syria meetings, I can't tell you how many, opportunities I get by trying to help another flipper find a house and say, hey, if you find something, let's walk it together and get opinions before you do it. And you find out they don't want to do it or afraid to do it or can't do it. And all of a sudden say, hey, let me work this deal out and then I'll pay you pay you a fee of some kind. So I think it's, in our class we teach, we've got 32 strategies to find flips. And in my case, almost all of them are face-to-face. And, I know Patrick's and both Darren are really good about, mailers and targeting areas that they want to do business in, and they get their, but that's a joint effort that can take a lot of time. So I found out that I can hit fewer numbers and get more opportunities by just being face-to-face with people.
Yeah. I think it's a big thing of, I know just when it comes to like building relationships and keeping those relationships, I've learned over the years of sometimes it's not worth having that negative conversation with somebody to possibly there could be a deal that comes out down, 2 years down the road because you haven't burnt that bridge. Where I've run into people that have burnt those bridges, all of a sudden their business has suffered from it because they had that one conversation that maybe turned things over. And Dave mentioned too, of just kind of giving back a little bit. Just a case in point, I did a call for Cyree. I think it was 2 months ago now. I did a call on Cyree. I think there were only 11 people on the call, which I was like, oh man, I wish it was a little bit bigger. I ended up getting 2 deals out of it just off of those 11 people, just by like giving up an hour of my time and giving back in some way. So finding little opportunities like that, I think it really can kind of improve it and stuff. Darren, I know, and we can kind of go to Darren and Patrick on this. I know you guys have done some marketing on your own too for different areas that you guys want to be in and that you guys want to find, source some properties in. What's some advice that you guys have? Maybe we'll start with Darren first, of just like when you are doing marketing on your own, because that's a whole other business. And all of a sudden it's not just a flipping business, but now you are a marketing business and you are, an advertising business. What's some advice you have for people like that when they start doing some marketing on their own to find deals?
Well, you can't. So it's a loaded question. Like, you can't give up. Whether, especially if it's like direct mail, you can't give up. You have to keep just going after it, because ultimately the goal of marketing is to be the forefront of their mind at the time that they need whatever service it is that you're providing. So like, you just can't give up. But you got to find something that's cost effective for you. Like, if you don't have a bunch of money, then direct mail is probably not the thing to do. And you may have to go like buy bandit signs or something. But yeah, don't give up, and then follow up, because I would say 99% of the phone calls you get are like, not a good lead right now, but they called for a reason. So, you got to follow up, and they might turn into something. And like Dave said, like a year or 2 years down the road, and, bam, now you've got it.
Yeah. Patrick, for you, I think we talked maybe about 6 months ago or whatever, and you want to share the neighborhood with me, but you're like, man, I found this neighborhood that I want to be in. I want to find some deals, but you started targeting that neighborhood with marketing and stuff like that. So what's some advice, kind of the same thing as Darren, is kind of answering, what's some advice you have for people when they find that area they want to be in and find that, and like how they go about kind of marketing and how to have those conversations?
Yeah. I believe people want to do business with people they like.
Yeah.
So for us, a lot of it's been being, to Dave's point, being there in person, right? We actually, so if we're buying properties in that neighborhood, we have yard signs we're putting out. We have company vans that have our branding on it that are parked out there every day as they're working on it. We have like doorknob hanger things that we put up and down the streets. So they know we're there. They know we're serious. And they see us physically working on the house every day. Because, I mean, as we all know, if you're sending postcards or doing text blasting and ringless voicemails, people are super sketched out by that.
Yeah.
It freaks them out. I mean, we still get, people that call after getting the mailer and go, how do you know where I live? They don't know that you could literally just Google it. So that's been a great thing for us is, if someone's interested, they'll walk down the block to where they see our work van and actually go talk to one of the guys and get the phone number and stuff. So that's been a big deal. Darren, I thought you were going to say 99% of the calls you get are just getting cussed out. Because that's what we get a lot of times.
I don't do, a lot of people are like on this kick where you must live answer the calls or whatever. I suppose if I had a VA, I might do that, but I let everything go to voicemail. I listen to it and I'm like, okay, I'll remove this from the list. Thank you.
Right.
Because They are a lot.
So
we're learning that Darren
Negative.
doesn't like the confrontation as much, and I'm just like,
I just don't have the patience for it. I'm like, yeah, man,
Yeah.
if you want to cuss somebody out, you pick the wrong guy. So
yeah.
I think a big thing, Patrick, with what you're saying too, of like kind of being out there in the community and having your signs up, they're seeing that the work you're doing. I can't even calculate how many deals we've got off of people that are like, hey, I don't want to just sell to anybody. Like, show me proof that you can close on this, or like, what are some other properties that you've done? Show me some other projects. And we need to build that confidence in them. You need to kind of have that, be that trusted person that is going to come through, and you're not going to just like tear up their house and leave it for, anybody to kind of just do anything with. So having that, I think, is really important.
I would say to get onto that, like, branding is a big thing. And that's basically what Patrick and you were talking about. Like, because I can't tell you how many times I go to a house and I'll see, my postcards, like with my emblem or my logo on them. I'll see Simple Wholesaling and a couple other, prominent wholesalers. And I'm like, okay, so those are the ones that they kept out of the probably 100 that they've got, and they threw the other ones in the trash. So branding and something that they can research and figure out that you're a real person in the local area, I think helps.
Yeah. So I think the whole thing of like being that guy next door, girl next door, I think that's passed a little bit. If you can do some more branding stuff, helps out definitely. So guys, I really appreciate your time. And as we kind of finish up this episode, I got a little question here for you. I know one of the biggest things when you are building a business, especially when you're flipping and renovating properties, you're always going to have that property that you renovated and then you sold. And then you look back 2 years later and been like, oh man, I wish I would have kept that one. Or I wish I would have done this with it. Or man, I should have had that one because the appreciation is crazy right now. Dave, do you have a story that kind of sticks out to you, or a house that sticks out to you? Just like you just hate the fact that you sold it and you wish you still had it. You're still hanging on to it.
I've got 3, all I got from the same client, all that I wholesaled. And I mean, quite honestly, these are small apartment buildings, and that market has just went crazy. I mean, I sold one for $350 that I had paid $250 for, and thinking, man, I'm a hero. Well, I'm a dummy, because it's probably worth $500 2 years later. And the other one was same thing. It was several units that was down to the studs because of water damage. I paid $190, sold it for $250, probably worth $600 now. So these are things and some of what we can do is even as an experienced guy that was on his rail, he didn't look at the long term, and he wasn't patient. Yeah. So it's okay to be patient in our business, and had I got more counsel from other guys like a Patrick, or some other guys, that they would have taken me aside and shook me and said, you need to keep this, and probably would have.
Yeah. So it's going to happen. We all have those deals and stuff like that. Patrick, do any deals stick out to you like that? Or just like, oh man, should have held that one. You drive past it every day, and
every day, so anytime, if it's one of our own flips or whatever, or even the GC work we do, I always go on like Redfin and hit the like button or whatever, so it'll send me updates. And every time, oh my gosh, there's an extra $30,000 I missed out on. And people have caught on to my West Side gig, right? And the pricing over there is silly now. I mean, we bought, the cheapest house I ever bought was on the near West Side, and we paid $13,000 for it. And we did a quick flip on it, sold it to an out-of-state buy and hold investor. We cleaned up on it financially. It was great. And if I just would have kept it another 9 months, there would have been an extra $30,000 on top of that for me. So I think it honestly, it's just a great reminder that real estate is where you can build wealth, but it does take time, right? So there's some balance there between the velocity of doing the deals and turning and going to the next, and making a bunch of dimes in a row versus holding on to some of them and doing that long-term play. But man, every time.
So I'm sure your dads might be in your ear about that too. Like, I see he's a buy and hold investor. Like, why are you hanging on to these? Why are you flipping these and turning? Yeah. So Darren, I'm going to change up your question a little bit. And as a flipper yourself, that's doing this, you're building this lifestyle business, and you say you are going to start to get into some Airbnb and some other stuff as well. But as a flipper, does your mindset just have to be like, hey, I'm okay turning this property and being okay with the profit I'm going to take now versus holding it long-term and going for the long-term play?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's always the first thing that I think of. And so, I kind of have to be patient with myself and think, okay, well, yeah, you analyze it as a flip, but will it work as an Airbnb? Because that is what you're trying to get.
Yeah.
You're trying to mold your model into that more of than, because flipping is very active, like the Airbnb, even if you buy a junk house and you have to flip it to yourself, like now it's done, you can hand it over to a property manager and just collect your paychecks every month, so but flipping, you have to be very active. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's always my first strategy. But yeah, man, I definitely am starting to see the buy and hold stuff. And I'm going to answer your other question without prompting anyway, but because I had a house in Cumberland like 2 years ago, I bought it at better than 1%, and all I could see out of it was flipping it, because I just didn't want to deal with the tenants. But if I'd have kept it for a year and a half and known that this COVID thing was coming and whatever's happening with the market right now, I probably could have turned, like, I think I made 25 on it. I probably could have turned that into like 85 or 90, honestly, this year.
Yep.
And I know that because I just researched a house in the same neighborhood like 2 weeks ago. I was like blown away at the values.
Yep. So, and for anybody out there listening, is that we've all been through this. We've all done it. We all have those properties that just stick in our heads throughout this. Like, oh man, we should have held on to that one. Or even those ones of like, oh man, I made a mistake on this. I should have done this with this, and or I should have done this with the kitchen even. So it's not even just the house itself, of even just like room by room, we've made those mistakes, and that's happened and stuff like that. So I'm gonna get you guys out of here. Dave, I know you need to take off. Before you run, Dave, what is if somebody wants to reach out to you and get some more contact information, or just learn more about what you're doing, or want to reach into your class or find out more about the Irvington Event Center, any of that stuff, how can they get in contact with you?
The best way is probably my email, which is dshort@c21sheets, scheetz.com. And I'll be at my event center, which is 6767 East Washington Street. Just stop in and visit us. We'll be here.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate that. Darren, if somebody wants to reach out to you, find out more about what you're doing, pick your brain a little bit, or want to sign up for your wholesaling your wholesaling 101 class, but your flipping 101 class, they can reach out to me for the wholesaling 101. Somebody wants to reach out about the flipping 101 class or find out more about what you're doing, how can they get in contact with you?
Yep. So the flipping now you got me confused about it. The flipping 101 class, go to cyria.club, and it is on our events tab or our calendar tab, one or the other. And if you want to get a hold of me personally, it's Darren at 317 Homebuyers. It's DARREN at 317homebuyers.com.
Awesome. And Patrick, if somebody wants to reach out to you, have you work on their next project, or pick your brain a little bit, how can they get in contact with you, my man?
Yeah. If you're looking at the screen, if you're watching the video of it, my name and the company is there. It's probably the easiest is to search it on Facebook. For anybody listening, just go to Facebook and search Stolco, STOLCO Designs, and you can message on there. It's got my email. I think it even has my phone number and stuff on there.
So awesome. Thanks a lot, fellas. Really appreciate it. And if you need anything from me or anything from us at our team at Simple Wholesaling, don't hesitate to reach out. You can hit me up at brian@simplewholesaling.com. I'm more than happy to help you out in any way. I'm here for you. And with that, that's a wrap for this episode of the Indy Investor Pod, and we will see you guys next time. Take care.
Thanks, guys.